All right, so get this. We're diving into AI today.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, but not just any AI, something called NotebookLM. And honestly, when I first heard the name, I was like, NotebookLM? What is that? Like a digital notebook, but for robots or something?
It does sound a bit like something out of a sci-fi movie, doesn't it?
Right. But then you sent in this blog post from, wait for it, Siberoloji.
Now, that's a cool name.
I know, right? And it's supposed to be like the ultimate guide to understanding Notebook LM, so.
Well, let's jump in and see what all the fuss is about.
Exactly. So first things first, what exactly is this Notebook LM thing?
Well, the article makes it clear right away that this isn't some gadget or anything. It's actually a language model.
A language model.
Yeah, basically think of it like a computer brain that's been trained on tons and tons of text and code. And it's designed to understand and even generate human-like language, which is where things get really interesting.
Interesting how?
Well, think about it. If it can understand and generate language like we do, the possibilities are pretty much endless, right?
I guess so.
Yeah.
So what can it actually do then? Like what's so special about it?
Well, the blog post throws out a bunch of uses, like it can write different kinds of creative content, summarize information from long documents, translate languages,
Wow.
even answer your questions, like a superpowered search engine.
Hold on, seriously. All that from one program. It almost sounds too good to be true.
It does make you wonder if it can live up to the hype, right?
Right. And if it's really that good, why isn't everyone using it already?
That's a great question. And the article does touch on that a bit. It's not exactly like a magic button you push and suddenly you have a best-selling novel, you know.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
It emphasizes using clear and specific prompts, meaning you need to know what you want from it and how to ask for it.
So it's like you need to speak its language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you tell it, write a story,
Yeah.
you might get something super generic and boring. But if you're like, write me a spooky mystery about a detective with a dark past, now you're talking.
Okay, so the more specific you are, the better it gets. Got it.
Right.
But what about bias? Like, if it's learning from all this existing text and code, couldn't it end up reflecting whatever biases were already there?
That's a really important question. And the blog post does acknowledge that potential issue. It talks about how the developers are working to build in safeguards, to minimize bias in the training data and all that.
That's good to hear. So it's not like they're just throwing this powerful tool out into the world without any thought about the consequences.
Exactly. They're trying to be responsible about it.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, the article stresses that it's still on us, the users, to be cautious and use our own judgment.
Right, like just because it can generate something doesn't mean it's automatically true or accurate, right?
Precisely.
We still need to think for ourselves.
Exactly. Think critically and double-check from reliable sources. Don't just blindly trust anything an AI spits out.
That's good advice for just about anything online these days, I think. So it's like this tool that can help us process information and think more creatively, but we still have to be the ones in control.
Exactly. It augments our abilities, not replaces them.
Makes sense. So let's say I'm not exactly a tech wizard. How easy is it to use Notebook LM?
Well, that's the thing. They actually designed it to be pretty user-friendly.
Really?
Yeah, you don't need to be a coder or anything. In fact, the article even mentions they have a free trial, so anyone can basically just try it out.
Wait, a free trial. Now you're speaking my language. Okay, so how does it actually work? What do I need to type in some special code or something?
Nope. It's more like, think of it like talking to a super smart assistant.
Okay, how so?
Instead of writing code, you just use natural language, like how we're talking now.
So I could just type in something like, hey, Notebook LM, write me a funny story about a dog who thinks he's a superhero.
Exactly. And depending on what you ask for, it can get really creative and specific with it.
Wow. Okay, now this is starting to make more sense. So the article mentions all these different fields it can be used in, like education, for example. How would that even work?
Right. So say you're a student and you're researching, I don't know, like Abraham Lincoln or something.
Okay.
Instead of just reading boring old textbooks, you could feed NotebookLM all these primary sources.
Primary sources, like what kind?
Like actual letters Lincoln wrote, speeches he gave, even old newspaper articles from back then.
Okay, so real historical documents.
Yeah, and NotebookLM could analyze all of that and give you summaries, pull out the key themes. It might even be able to spot connections you wouldn't have seen otherwise.
That is really cool. It's like having like a super-powered research assistant.
Totally. And that's just one example. Imagine using it to learn new languages, practice creative writing, or even get personalized tutoring. The possibilities are pretty much endless.
Okay, this is blowing my mind a little bit. So it can write stories, research historical figures, what else? It also mentioned customer service. Is NotebookLM coming for my job next?
Probably not, but it could definitely make things easier for people in those roles.
Yeah.
Imagine it analyzing thousands of customer inquiries.
Okay.
It could figure out what the most common questions and complaints are, and then suggest answers to customer service reps in real time.
Oh, that's pretty smart. So it's like automating all the repetitive stuff.
Exactly. That frees up the human agents to deal with the more complicated issues.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like let the AI handle the basics and then you can have humans step in when you need actual, human interaction.
Exactly. And that brings us back to this idea of NotebookLM as a tool. It can be incredibly powerful and helpful,
Right.
but ultimately it's up to us to use it effectively and responsibly.
Right, because with great power comes great responsibility.
Mm.
And speaking of responsibility, the article does mention some ethical concerns about NotebookLM.
Of course, there are always going to be some challenges with any new technology, especially something this powerful.
Like what are some of the concerns they bring up?
Well, one thing they talk about is bias in the data it's trained on.
Oh, right. Because if it's learning from existing text and code and that stuff already has bias in it,
Exactly. Then it could end up spitting out biased results without us even realizing it.
and that could be dangerous, especially if people are just blindly trusting whatever the AI tells them.
Right, which is why it's so important for the developers to be aware of this and try to address it.
So are they doing anything to fix that?
Yeah, the article says that they're actually putting a lot of effort into detecting and correcting for bias in the training data.
That's good to hear. So they're taking it seriously. But even with all that, it seems like we still need to be careful, right?
Absolutely. We can't just assume that any AI, no matter how advanced, is going to be perfectly objective and unbiased.
We still need to think for ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Human judgment and critical thinking are always going to be crucial, no matter how sophisticated our technology gets.
It's like we're walking this tightrope between like the amazing potential of AI and the responsibility that comes with it.
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
Definitely. But for those of us who are now like totally intrigued by this whole Notebook LM thing, where can we go to learn more?
Well, the good news is the blog post gives us a whole bunch of resources.
Oh, perfect. Like what?
So they have a link to the official documentation for NotebookLM.
Okay, so that's like the technical deep dive.
Exactly. If you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of how it all works, that's the place to start. But if you're more like me and you prefer, a bit more of a hands-on approach, they also mention these online forums.
Ooh, forums. I like the sound of that.
Yeah, it's where users share tips, ask questions, kind of like a little community.
No, that's cool. So you can connect with other people who are also figuring this whole thing out.
Exactly. It's a great way to learn from each other and, avoid common pitfalls and stuff.
That's awesome. And are there like any other resources or is that pretty much it?
Well, on top of the documentation and the forums, they also recommend checking out tutorials and online courses.
Oh, right. Because some people learn best by actually doing right.
Exactly. And there are tons of resources out there no matter what your skill level is.
Perfect. So no matter how you prefer to learn, there's a way for everyone to dive into Notebook LM.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so exciting about it. This isn't just some, far-off technology for the elite or anything. It's accessible now to anyone who's curious enough to give it a try.
I don't know about you, but I'm definitely feeling inspired to do some exploring of my own after this. This whole deep dive has been a roller coaster, honestly. It's exciting, it's a little bit scary,
Yeah, of course.
but mostly it's just amazing to see how far AI has come and what it's capable of.
Absolutely. And who knows what the future holds. But one thing's for sure, things are about to get very interesting.
That's for sure. And on that note, we'll wrap things up here. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. And remember, the future of AI is in our hands. Let's use it wisely.